What's your view on the MLC's voting for a chief minister or not? What was the Liz Vane thing?
I was delighted that Chris Thomas got that through.
Just because numbers are close.
Absolutely. No, you had to have the 17 votes,
yes.
and there were only
some were away.
Getting that vote through was really fundamentally important, and it's not about. Legco, Legco and Keys, we've got to make sure they're all working collectively and together, and Legco has to vote for the Chief Minister as well as the Keys does. This is about the Chief Minister who will have the most influence on the policies of government for the next 5 years. Just after the election, the Keys members know who... They know the will of the people who voted them in. Legco doesn't know that, and it's not for Legco to be interfering.
Yeah, Howard Quayle didn't actually want it, which is interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Howard, of course, was taking that view that you needed to bring both branches of Tynwald with him. Actually, that shouldn't be the case. Legco, if it has to continue to exist, and I'm not really convinced of the need for it. I think government, Tynwald. The people of the Isle of Man could save an awful lot of money by just getting rid of Legco altogether.
Okay, but this leads me to the thing that come February, is your name going to be down?
No.
Will you not let it go down? Or
no.
You're not keen to be an MLC?
I would hate to be a member of the Legislative Council.
Yeah, others have said that. Mr. Cretney's not exactly enamoured about it, but he's done it. He did one term.
I'm enjoying my semi-retirement and
still farming, are you?
Doing little bits and pieces.
And the other thing?
And the commissions and stuff. But no, Claire Poole-Wilson, I think, came in to replace Tony Wilde. Really sorry to see Tony go, but I can understand his reasons for doing so. And I don't know Claire very well. But what I am told from some colleagues is she knows her own mind, and she's determined to press on and do her thing.
Quite at the minute, I'm thinking...
And yet, that's not... Is that what Legco's there for? Because actually... If that's what you really want out of politics, you stand for the House of Keys, and that's where the political drive should come from. Legco should be there, perhaps, to make sure that some brakes can be cut.
So they shouldn't be striving politicians; they should be lawyers, and that sort of, which has failed so far to really.
They should be there to make sure to give Keys the opportunity to think again if they felt that Keys were running headlong in the direction of a cliff.
I'm hearing there's a lot of women that are going to be put forward for MLCs. There's a sort of real groundswell. They feel they've got to make this look more balanced. What your views?
I think it's great, and I think it should happen. But again, my view is
positive discrimination.
Keys is the way forward for this. You should find ways in which people would be more inclined to want to stand for Keys. And actually, going back to this, I remember raising this myself after I'd been on a Commonwealth Parliamentary Association conference.
Which is not a jolly?
I don't think so.
It's not. I said because
it's not essential. It's not essential, but it's useful because it helps you think about things that perhaps you wouldn't be normally thinking about, and you meet other politicians with other ideas, and you can share ideas. So it's it's in that regard, it's quite a good thing. But I remember coming back. There was a discussion about representation of women in parliaments in the Commonwealth, and the Isle of Man was second worst only to Alderney. Alderney had no women whatsoever, and I don't think ever had, and the Isle of Man at that stage.
But we made up for it.
I think there were two, and I remember saying to our Commonwealth Parliamentary Association branch, I said we should do something about this, and it's not about positive discrimination. It's about looking at what we do as a parliament that inhibits women from wanting to stand in the first place. And some of the strongest opposition to what I was suggesting actually came from the two women who were members of the House of Keys at the time. I think it's a good thing to have more women represented in Tynwald.
And what about ex-politicians? I mean, you're saying no, but there's going to be probably names in there that I'm hearing as well. And a certain lady who would be very interesting. She's back. What do you think to that?
Good. I don't see... Again, I lost out this time round by, I don't know, it was just over a dozen votes. In my 4 elections, I've had 6,000 or 7,000 votes. And for some reason, because I missed out by a dozen votes, some people believe that I shouldn't have the opportunity to stand as a member of the Legislative Council. I mean, not that, as I say, don't get me wrong, I have no wish to do so. And yet other people are getting elected with 13 votes from members of the House of Keys. And you think, well, you know, people who've never even had the bottle to stand in a proper general election getting elected by 13 votes. I'm not convinced by that process. I'm not convinced by arguments that say people who failed by tiny amounts not to get elected shouldn't then be allowed to stand. But also, I'm not convinced of the need for LegCo in the first place.
Okay.
I think you could cut the whole LegCo budget, use half the money to pay people who have experiences in the areas that you need support with to advise departments or advise Tynwald scrutiny committees, and you've got your problem solved. How
do you think the gentleman who took over your position's done in that post since, besides the promenade being sorted on a short-term basis, which we've dealt with in the past? How do you think it's going? I mean,
I think it's the most incredibly difficult job, despite what the Chief Minister says. He's convinced that health was the most incredibly difficult job, but I'm convinced DOI is the most difficult. It's a very difficult job. I think Ray's doing as good a job as anyone could. The only area that I think I would have been pushing harder for, and I don't know whether he has on this, is it is blatantly obvious that we are massively underinvesting in our infrastructure at the moment. We have growing reserves. Yes, we've got various problems with public sector pensions, but some of that money that's in the reserves should be being invested in our infrastructure at the moment, and I would have been pushing harder to get some of that investment. But again, I don't know what Ray's doing.
We've done an amazing long talk. We haven't done the review of the year at all. We just kept with politics, but it's been brilliant. What about, again, the word on the, you hear is there's going to be some sort of reshuffle soon. There's certain people that seem that, and they may want to step down even. You're hearing that, I'm sure. Yeah. Would you see that likely in the near future?
Yeah, I think it seems quite possible. I know, for example, the Health Minister's name has been mentioned a few times. I know she's not been well recently. So perhaps that's
the name that everyone's talking about. Yeah. But I mean, it could be for ill health or anything, couldn't it? But I mean, it looks like there's going to be some moving. What would you do? I mean, you've got limited gene pool in there. You've got people who've got some experience still. I mean, Mr. Peake, for instance, hasn't yet been made one. He was from the last administration. Do you think that's where you go, or do you just go for the best person? I mean, Alison, the doctor, seems like a very... But he couldn't take health, of course, probably.
There are loads of very talented, very capable people that have been elected. So I don't think you have a limited talent pool by any means. What you lack, though, I think, is political nous, and of course that's almost completely lacking
political nous
in Keys. There's only really Mr. Watterson, the Speaker, who has. There's anyone else who's done 2 terms? Oh, Graham Cregeen's done 2 terms. So there's 2 of them who've done 2 full terms in Keys, and I think that's ultimately that's the bit that's most important. That political nous is the thing that's going to keep you. Allow you to survive and do good things as a government. So I think that's the bit that Howard is going to have to keep in.
This might be unfair, but if there was a change at the top, for instance, a step down of the Chief Minister, who would you see as a natural successor there?
To be honest, I really don't know.
Mr. Cannon wants it, clearly.
Obviously,
sorry, I'm saying that. He hasn't told me that. He just assumed it looks like that.
I think you could reasonably say that. And certainly since Alphas took over as Treasury Minister, there haven't been quite so many extravagant public gestures, perhaps, as there may have been in the past. I think some of his rhetoric that used to be quite populist is perhaps becoming a bit more realist, which may
has been interesting to watch.
Yeah. But as far as I can see,
isn't it?
Howard is doing a good job as Chief Minister. He's lucky, I think, to have a fairly... I mean, compliant isn't the right word. A Tynwald that is trying to work and do its best for the public, but I think the political nous that Tynwald lacks is realising that government doesn't always get it right, and there are occasions where perhaps you should be more, a bit stronger in terms of your voicing of opposition and questioning some of the things that Tynwald does. I mean, another good recent addition in relation to the Keys, of course, is Tim Baker. And going back to one of my former roles as Agriculture Minister, I think Tim has been incredibly brave to take on the role of the sort of lead on the meat plant issue. That is an enormously difficult task that he's taking on there, and that shows a huge amount of political courage on his part to take that on.
Okay, we've talked for a long time here. Maybe again have to throw in here. I asked the guys after 1 year in office how they rated themselves. I'm not asking that, but asking them to rate the government as well. Any ideas? Off the top of your head, out of 10, what would you say they've done? Any ideas?
I would say 6, 7.
It's quite low.
I looked at the 12-month achievements that were listed, and they all seemed to be things that we had intended to do as the previous government, and probably would have hoped to get them done slightly more swiftly than the 12 months that it took. But government is working effectively. They seem to be coming out with some good policies. The programme for government, whilst having lots of similarities to the previous agenda for change that we had, does seem to be a programme that everyone in Tynwald seems to have bought into. That is a good thing.
Don't you think the last few months things have slightly come undone in places? It was a very great first year, but there's been resignations and things like that, and suddenly there was a bit more angst amongst some members maybe than there was before, but no?
You expect it. I mean,
your administration was really different.
As I said at the very start, it is the most stressful environment to actually work in. It is incredibly high pressure. As politicians, you effectively forget about any sort of personal life that you might have had before. You have to be completely focused on your politics. So the stresses and strains of the job inevitably will cause a few tensions to come. And the fact that there have been so few, even after 12 months, in my view, I think they're doing okay. Okay,
the final googly here. Are you standing again next time in the House of Keys in 3 whatever years it's going to be now?
As Sean Connery, I think, once said, never say never again. But
so that's a maybe.
It is a maybe, but I think it's the chances of hell freezing over are more likely.
But you're right. Never say never.
But you just don't know. I mean, I still care passionately about politics. I'm probably as convinced as I've been for a long time that you can do more to influence politics outside of the sort of the madhouse, for want of a better word, than you can inside. Inside, you're so busy focused on everyone else's issues.
Are you busy letter writing or things like that? Adding your support to members?
I respond to consultations when I can. Obviously, I provide support at the local level. And again, you look at some of the stuff that we're trying to influence, or I used to try and influence as a Tynwald member. There's an awful lot that you can do on the ground, so to speak. As clerk to the commissioners, I may have said this to you before, I have more power than I had as minister in relation to certain highways maintenance
because
functions.
You make decisions
because
and
I can
get
just do it. I pick up the phone and say, come on, get the job done. And actually there's something in that says perhaps we need to look more at devolving power, not just to local authorities, but devolving power in departments as well, instead of having everything having to be fed back to the top. And that happens primarily because of the blame sort of culture that exists in Manx politics. If there was a way in which you could release the officers, the highly trained, highly capable and competent officers, to get on with the job and not have to keep filing reports back to the centre to make sure that everyone knows what's happening. So if anything ever happened to go wrong...
And FOI, of course, has brought in a whole thing. But we'll come back again. You're great.
Yeah,
we can talk to you all the time, and I hope you enjoyed this. We'll see how many hits you get on this one. Anyway, all the best. Have a great new year, and never say never.
Never say never.